Hello, this is the kubeadm office hours. Today is the 5th of August, 2020. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. And let me share my screen. Okay. I don't see any new meeting participants. I don't have any PSAs. Does anybody else have any announcement to add here?
Maybe do more work to point people to the survey, to the document for the survey.
Oh, yes, I've already linked it in this meeting. I don't remember when. And I also emailed the mailing list. Okay, I'm going to link it again. Just a second.
I think it was a couple of weeks ago.
Am I allowed to take this survey?
No, I give you a little bit of context, Marek. Nice to see you back. And so we are planning to launch a new survey when the KubeCon starts. And we are trying to make this survey not only for kubeadmin, but for the entire SIG clusterized cycle. And so basically there will be a general session. Then if you are using kubeadmin, you get into a branch for kubeadmin specific question. If you are using cluster API, you get into a specific cluster API session, and so on and so forth. So this is the idea, and the contribution from everyone defining the survey. I really appreciate it.
Cool. I'll look over it.
By the way, Dubrin, I provide some additional feedback. They are mostly cosmetic. My original feedback were provided some months ago.
Do you want to discuss it now?
I'm okay for the kubeadmin part and also for the general part. So unless people want to give a quick pass, I think that for me, we can move to other topics.
Okay. I think I saw the cluster API adding questions. I'm going to update. By the way, I think Fabrizio, you should be able to have access, edit access to this, the actual form. So I'm going to make the updates, but if you see something that is not right in the form, you can also edit. Rossi, I think you also have access. But the rest of the people should see this. Nobody sees the actual form yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can't see the form, so I can attest to that.
Yeah, we are using the Google Doc as the place for deciding the questions. And then a few people can do the edits. And that's it. Okay. Moving to the next topic. I saw the user reported this today. Apparently, when we do kubeadm reset, we have a regression that if the user has mounted the varlib kubelet directory, so the actual storage resides on another volume, on another device, sorry, kubeadm unmounts it when it's doing kubeadm reset. The reason for that is, I believe it's related to looking at the PR that the user also sent. It's due to a missing slash at the end of the path. So when we iterate over the proc mounts, if the kubelet directory is present as a mount, we are going to also unmount it because we have an if check, and it basically we end up unmounting the kubelet directory, which is not ideal. Rossi, I think I already CC'd you on this PR. I think we should not backport this because the workaround obviously is to people to mount the device again. So there's a straightforward workaround.
I'll take a look at it later today.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it is a OS specific behavior or something similar, because it seems that the code was not changed by ages.
Yeah, so what happened there is that at some point we made a change, which was in the 1.15 cycle. We added a fix, some sort of a fix, to tolerate varlib kubelet to also be a symbolic link. And I think this function here, which is part of the Go standard library, is resulting in the removal of the trailing slash or something like that. Actually, no, excuse me. We regress this when we change the usage of, we remove the usage of AWK. So that's not the PR that broke it. We removed AWK, which is a shell command here, and we introduced this. It was my suggestion, actually. We traverse the contents of the proc file, proc mounts file, and we manually call a system call. Yeah, that is the unmount. And this is the breakage. At some point, I think, I believe Ed Bartosz. Yes, Ed Bartosz explicitly added this trailing slash again because otherwise AWK unmounts the kubelet directory also. So when we refactored the logic, we broke it again.
Okay, it makes sense. So it is a real bug and not something which is OS specific.
Yeah, it used to be broken. We fixed it with Ed Bartosz PR. Then when we refactored, we regressed again. And now it's broken. So it is a regression, but it's not a critical bug of sorts.
By the way, I'm +1 to not backport it. I don't see it a common use case, and there is a workaround.
I'm okay with not backporting it.
Eventually, if someone asks for backporting, we will consider.
Okay. Moving to the next topic, Fabrizio.
Yeah, I was just wondering, given that this meeting is the attendance is more or less the same. It is this small group of people. I think that we can move this meeting to be weekly, but it's not a problem for me also to keep it every week. It's just a proposal. So the change currently the change are not the change rate in kubeadm is lower. The topic to discuss are less. So up to you.
Rossi, what do you think?
I think that we can possibly do it like bi-weekly because like Fabrizio said, the change rate is lower, there are fewer issues and at least like critical issues that we're discussing, and the agenda topics are less and less in number, and mostly we're doing issue triages for which we can also like book separate meetings.
I'm also +1 to this. I think some context. I think kubeadm is quite mature at this point. Back in the day, before the Coastal API meeting was, when the Coastal API meeting started, I believe, we saw that the main Coastal lifecycle meeting was basically the main Coastal lifecycle meeting transitioned to bi-weekly. We used to use this meeting for discussing kubeadm. So basically, we had a couple of meetings for discussing kubeadm every week, and it was still not sufficient. But this was some time ago, and nowadays kubeadm is quite stable, which is great. I'm +1 to this, and I think that if we do it, given we have a meeting today, we can skip next week and alternate following this pattern.
Sounds good to me.
Right. I'm going to change the community calendar today. Should I announce this to the mailing list? I guess I should do it.
Yeah, you should do it, and probably just leave a comment in the sequester lifecycle chatting on Slack.
Yeah, I'm wondering I should probably do just the SIG channel or the mailing list only, I guess. Anyway, maybe both. Okay. All right. Do we have more topics? I think we have some interesting issues in the kubeadm issue tracker to look at. So unless we have anything else we can do, we should triage. Okay. By the way, so today I clicked the merge button because Fabrizio, you saw this PR. Basically, I had to click the merge button. Actually, no. This one. I had to click the merge button because apparently the kinder latest -115 marker is gone. So we cannot use it. Actually, we cannot use it in kinder. It's gone from the Kubernetes release. as a whole. And I pinged people on Slack about it. This means that if we basically cannot test our 115 to 116 upgrade jobs anymore, but 116 is still in support. So they have to keep 115 for longer than that. Apparently, it was removed like a couple of days ago for, I don't know why. I've stated multiple times that we shouldn't remove these old markers that soon. Yeah, that was the reason I had to click the merge. But this is an issue we have.
That means that we have some job filing to do this.
I saw the jobs have not started failing yet because they are very like less frequent. I think we run them 12 hours apart, but the PR itself here failed because we have we fetch markers during the verify job. So we fetch, we test the workflows. Yeah, we're verifying the workflow for the SKU 116, 115. It tries to fetch the marker from the internet, but it fails because the marker no longer exists, which means that our CI cannot pass here.
Okay, because we are verifying the marker during the, okay, I got it.
And actually, this is a very good way to catch such breaking changes, even in PRs, instead of waiting 12 hours to catch the problem. Yeah, so hopefully, if the SIG release refuses to add the marker back, I guess I have to remove the jobs because they're going to start failing.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because technically we are supporting this upgrade operation. So
yeah, my problem with SIG release here is that they remove markers completely on a completely arbitrary times. I mean, I could understand that. Okay, we have a policy. When the code freeze for 119 happens, we should remove the 115 marker or something like that, something solid. But it's at a completely arbitrary time, which is a problem.
let's see how they answer.
Yeah, just added a quick note. So for the PRs, I don't have anything else in this report. So let's look at the tickets. This is the regression with the unbound. So this is interesting. I actually pinged some people at VMware about it, like Nadir. Basically, we disabled the insecure ports for these components. And now, if you want to do a health check, you have to use HTTPS. But these corporates are serving with a self-signed certificate. So, basically, when you do a health check, you bypass validation. And the user is suggesting that maybe we should start signing the serving certificates for the kube scheduler and kube control manager. But you should read the discussion. But what I think here is that this is jumping over the boundary of kubeadm being the minimal viable cluster. I don't think we should do this. It's already possible to work around it if you use the kubeadm API. You can pass the flags, sign the certificates, mount them as volumes. Yeah.
But currently we are not checking the health of the kube scheduler and controller manager.
We have probes that do the health check. It's just that the user is recommending that we should actually, if we serve these components, we should also enable certificates.
But our components, basically, so our probes work without a self-sign certificate.
Yeah, the probes apparently work without, the probes apparently work even if you sign the certificates. The probes are still going to work, because for the API server today, we obviously have API server certificates, serving certificates, but the probe still works. It just does not check that it trusts the server. It just tries to connect.
Okay, it does not TLS validation.
Yes, exactly. And so this is part of that is the health checks. The other part is that we should just, what the user is suggesting, we should just sign the certificates for, use the CA, the kubeadm CA to sign the certificates. You know, I brought multiple arguments here, including like, hey, we are not doing that for the kubelet. We're not managing the kubelet. Like, who is going to rotate these certificates? Obviously, either kubeadm or some sort of controller has to rotate them. And then also, we have to copy these certificates in the HA certificate copy functionality as well, because they are control plane certificates. And it's just a complication that I said, let me try to quote myself here. The benefits need to justify the maintenance complexity. So I don't see we gain that much with this feature. So I'm overall -1 for this. We should rally discussions on the topic. And I said that if you really want this, you should write a KEP.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand the problem. So, you know, basically the user, what we need is it is a server certificate. Okay, and the user is asking us to generate a new server certificate, generated starting from the Kubernetes CA. Is that the request? That means two new certificates, one for the scheduler and one for the kube proxy.
We need to have two new certificates and two new keys. Basically, today, kubeadm is not adding, for kube scheduler and kube controller manager, kubeadm is not adding this flag. And also the other flag, there is a private key. So if, like the docs here say, if you don't pass these flags, a self-signed certificate in key are generated for public access and saved. Basically, but the contributor, the user, what he said is that instead what happens is a CA is generated in memory that signs these certificates. It's not really self-signed certificates. They create an internal temporary CA and then sign using it. So basically, the user is suggested that kubeadm should start doing this. But you know, there's an overall argument like, why should we do this? Why should the general, you know, the 80% of the kubeadm, which is the basic use case, like why should the 80% care about this? And I don't really think it's something that we should do.
Yeah, doing a certificate only for the probes seems kind of overkilling. Given that the probes are not checking certificates, are not doing TLS authorization.
Yes, it's also for metrics, I guess. I forgot to mention that the metrics endpoint can be, the certificates can be used for, sorry, so once you have the component serving, you can use some sort of a client to connect to the metrics, use, you know, the proper TOS for that.
Yeah. So this requires a cap, because I don't want that. For sure, there is a transition from now to the target state, and I don't want to break metrics. People are doing metric scraping now for fixing an health check. So a cap seems inappropriate, because yeah, I don't want to break people doing and yeah, as we are saying, then you have to create the certificate, manage certificate rotation during the upgrades, and yeah, I kind of agree with you that it seems overkill for health, only for health checks.
I see that somebody added this here. Do we have the person on the call who added this question?
I added because I was curious to understand this in detail. I saw the issue, but I didn't have time to read it through all the comments.
Okay, Fabrizio, please comment on the ticket. Rossi, you also got a comment?
Yeah, I'm so on this, but if the user who reported the issue wants to discuss it and possibly get into deep waters by creating a cap, then I'm perfectly okay, as long as this is his contribution and it doesn't involve breaking changes and too much strangely looking code into kubeadm in order to just have proper certificates that are not checked.
Okay. By the way, we did break users a little, and it was in the context of the issue, I think. So when we added this as a security fix to all the versions, this is just a side PSA here. We did break a lot of people that were using basically scraping the health checks insecurely of these components using the component status API. So they do kubectl get component status, and it used to work for kubeadm, but once we did this, component status stopped working. It's because the component status API does not support secure serving of these components. And I saw Sada QE sent a PR to fix that, but the SIG architecture folks, I guess, said that we are not fixing this API anymore, and we pretty much deprecated component status in 1.19. So if you see somebody asking for it, it's deprecated at this point. Thankfully.
Actually, I thought that it was deprecated about a year ago, which is kind of strange that it's in 1.19.
Yes, I think the problem there is that the main problem there is the component status is part of V1. It's part of the V1 API. So if you deprecate it, at some point you should remove it. But removing something from a REST API means that you have to release a new version, which means that potentially because of component status, we have to have a V2. And because Golang is a funny language, we have to do so much changes everywhere. Every single import, every single prefix, it's yeah. So please comment on this ticket. I'm hoping also that Nadir can get back to it. He said that he's busy today. All right. This is about version markers again. I think I spoke about this last time. Don't remember.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it.
At some point, we added this special version marker that is Kates-master, but I don't think it's being removed, but at least all the usage around it is being removed from the actual release process. And also it includes the word master, and I just said that we should remove the usage for it.
I'm fine to remove it.
Yeah, by the way, I think all the markers that are prefixed with Kates are just weird. We have something like Kates beta, beta version. I don't know what it's doing. It's just completely arbitrary, eventually a completely arbitrary tag.
But probably they were used, they were just added in test because they existed. But as far as I know, we are using only, and people are using only latest 1.15, 1.16, so latest underscore version or CI underscore version.
Yeah, we in the kinder jobs we're using one of the same markers. We have some really interesting markers. I just wanted to show you. Okay, because I was doing some investigation today to help 6CLI to fix their tests. Because currently in Kubernetes the kubectl skew tests are broken. I tried to help them. We have some very interesting markers such as latest fast. We have stable 1, stable 2, and Kates beta as well. So these are supposed to be like get me the like how is it CI and stable at the same time? It's like it's not clear. But the idea is to get a version that is one older than the current CI, maybe. These are kind of confusing. We also have Kates beta, which for some reason does not give me the 119 work in progress. It gives me the 118 RC0. I don't know. I propose that we should just have a cap for these at some point, or a document where we basically decide what markers make sense. For kubeadm, we don't care that much. We are using those that hopefully are not going to be removed ever.
Unfortunately, those bits of marker are not documented, and
Yeah. And the folks that originally created them no longer work on Kubernetes, so now the SIG release are forced to try to understand how they work. We have a PR for this, for the warning. I think we are pretty much done with the issue triage. Let me see the PRs and KK. I think we don't have anything new there. Yeah, I think we already triaged these. What we can do is quickly look at the 120 remaining tickets, I guess. Just quickly, and we can end early. Unless somebody has topics. So this is deprecation that we have to execute. Hypercube. These API changes. V1 beta 3 easy to consume. So I saw Fabrizio, I saw discussions by the Cluster API folks, Andy in specific. Andy was proposing that basically Cluster API starts wrapping the kubeadm config public config types in such a
I can give my take on those discussions. So basically, in Cluster API now we are exposing the kubeadm types, the raw kubeadm types. This comes with some advantages, but also disadvantages. For instance, in the kubeadm control plane object, we are configuring in a single kubeadm config. We are configuring the bit for joining for the initial control plane and the joining control plane. So we have both init configuration and join configuration, and the user has to take care of make the two things consistent. For instance, node registration option should be consistent, and also it is weird because we are configuring the option for a control plane, and we have to take care of in the kubeadm config to tell again this is a control plane. So it is kind of weird because there are some concepts which we want to explore to expose the low level, and some concept that we want to get inherit from the Cluster API objects. And this is one problem. The second problem is that in Cluster API we are stuck to V1 beta 1, which is going to be deprecated, and we have to plan how to keep up with kubeadm, and there is no simple way to convert kubeadm config, because the configuration bits are not public and kubeadm cannot be vendored. So while discussing this, there was some ideas put on the table, and one of these ideas was to basically wrap kubeadm with something. There was two ideas on the table. One is to use kubeadm V1 release of config, but this is not yet planned. So I see this not a realistic option. And the second one was to basically define a version agnostic release of the kubeadm API and mask to the user V1 beta 1, V1 beta 2 conversion and whatever. It's still something in discussion, but yeah, basically we in Cluster API we're facing the problem that there is no conversion for the component config. That is the underlying problem.
Actually, we do expose such a conversion, but it's exposed at the command line. So basically, you need the kubeadm config migrate, and it's going to migrate to the latest supported version.
Yeah, and you cannot vendor this as a library. So this is the problem. And this and also some other discussion triggered some. I share with you some idea about the future of kubeadm for me. And as much as I think about it, it is important that kubeadm in the future became basically three different things. One is a library. kubeadm should be a library that could be vendored. Second is a CLI. And the goal of the CLI should be mostly the bootstrap. And third is an operator, and the goal of the operator should be the life cycle of existing cluster.
I second this. I actually really like that. It solves issues. I particularly like it if the CLI uses the library.
Yeah, and also the operator uses the library, or external tool can use the library. I was
right. I was just bringing that clarification so that like the CLI and the operator don't use anything internal. They use the public API, just like everybody else would.
Yeah, and we implemented this method in cluster cattle, and it works well, even if in cluster cattle there is not the operator yet. And yeah, I'm starting to, let me say, to think around this idea. Probably as soon as I have something that makes sense to be shared, I will involve more people in the discussion. Because probably this is not really different from what we discussed in the past. Maybe is expressed a little bit better, but basically we were stuck by the idea of moving kubeadmin for where it is to the kubeadmin repo. And I guess that we can, let me say, work around to this problem, start moving the library. So we start, basically, we can start emptying the current kubeadmin, moving only, I don't know, cert management into the kubeadmin repo as a library, and make the current CLI use the library for this part. So this is a possible way to start moving kubeadmin. But of course, I'm still at the high level idea. I think that we want, this should be stated before in terms of principles and goals, and then we have to involve more people in the idea.
Let me know if you ever want or need any help writing something up. I'd be interested. I like the idea.
Sure. I hope then to get some time in the coming weeks.
Then again, if we expose kubeadm as a library with the idea to support conversion between types, aren't we breaking the rules of API machinery where internal types should not be consumed by other components?
To be honest, no. If we use the same approach that was implemented by kubebuilder. Kubebuilder is a exposing method for conversions, but it basically goes from one public version to another version. It never goes to internal types.
That is without checking kubebuilder. That is what I've seen in other projects outside of Kubernetes. So the internal type is a very interesting concept that I have not seen before. We could technically, maybe for the next API version of kubeadm, start moving away from these converters and generators that we use today and start implementing our own conversion. I believe Kind already did this. Basically, they have public to public type conversion as well. I don't know if there's even a concept as an internal type. Yeah, we should think more about this, but I think there's something fundamentally wrong. Even if Cluster API imports kubeadm as a library, why should it do it?
I make an example. In Cluster API, there are code for generating kubeconfig or code for generating certificates.
Yeah, I understand. I understand this part. This is clear, obviously, kubeadm is a library, okay. But what about the problem here? Like, why should? How is this related to the easier consumption? of the kubeadm API.
If there is if kubeadm is supporting conversion, cluster API is not forced to wrap the kubeadm API to basically to hide the problem to the users and to implement conversion, because at the end, cluster API will be forced to implement conversion now.
Okay, and then the cluster API, maybe cluster kernel, will override the user YAML on disk to convert it from one version of the kubeadm API to another?
Yeah, so whenever there is the need, let's assume a cluster. I have an existing cluster API cluster. Okay, in this cluster, all the kubeadm config are in the 1 beta 1 version. Okay, as soon as I have to upgrade, I need something that keeps these configs and convert to the latest version, which is 1 beta 2. If we manage to expose something similar, there is no need for CAPI to wrap the kubeadm API, unless they want to hide something to the user. But at least we give a clear path. Okay, this is how you convert a kubeadm config. You can do it. And the same goes from all the other utility and goodies that are in kubeadm.
Okay, so the user manifest on disk is going to be converted as well? This was my question.
The user manifest, in this case, I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean with the user manifest. You mean the kubeadm config object?
So basically, when you create a cluster API cluster, you have to the bootstrap provider of kubeadm, using the cluster API bootstrap provider kubeadm, you have to pass a YAML file that may include user values with the kubeadm API. This is currently what is implemented.
Now, in my opinion, the use case is an existing cluster where the YAML was already applied. So I have object in the cluster and I update object in the cluster. I have conversion webhooks for the object in the cluster.
I see. So we're still leaving this, the user has to manually convert this YAML. If they want to create a new cluster with a new kubeadm version, they have to manually convert this.
Or we implement conversion webhooks that as soon as the user give an old things, we convert to the new one. During this is a kind of admission webhook. But yeah, really the idea is that now there is no option for doing this apart to re-implement. And I don't like to re-implement a bit of kubeadm inside of cluster API. And this is why I was thinking, is there a way to get a seed of the kubeadm library somehow? And then I started thinking, and then I know I threw the idea on the table without much contest, but yeah, I see that there are potential use cases for it.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea to start moving parts of kubeadm. I know one problem there is that if this part of kubeadm is importing client Go or something that is already in Kubernetes staging, we cannot do it. So let me give you an example. So imagine that we want to move the utils version, for instance. Where is version? Yeah, it's a file. So Kubernetes API machinery in this case is something that is published from staging to this repository. If we move this file to the kubeadm repository, we cannot bring it back into the KK repository as a package that is vendored, because there's this problem of something that imports API machinery, but the API machinery is published from KK. I don't understand it very well.
Yeah, and there are many details that should be defined, and I agree with you. It is something that should be explored, but definitely let me say, the reason for moving to a cluster API to a kubeadm library, at least from my point of view, are growing day by day.
Because this can be blocked for a long time, do you think that, what is the idea of using an operator, the kubeadm operator, to do the conversions? Like, can we use that, which may be the faster solution?
Yeah, but how do you build an operator? Rewriting the kubeadm code. So in my opinion, also the operator needs the library.
Yeah, the operator is in kubeadm repository. It has to import KK again.
So the first step is to start getting the library. And then we can decide what is the most important thing for the library, the API, or I don't know, the some utils for certificates or for kubeconfig.
To my understanding, we cannot even move the kubeadm API today because of these imports. We either have to move the whole kubeadm or we cannot move part of it.
Really, I don't understand this. Why? We cannot.
Because these repositories are currently being published from staging. That was the explanation I got.
Yeah, but how they are doing for I don't know, for kubectl? I guess that kubectl use this
kubectl has not moved completely yet. I believe only the client library has moved.
Yeah, this is something that we should explore. So
yeah, kubectl is in staging. It has not moved the same way. Like, we have a separate kubeadm repository here. kubectl is not using a separate repository the way we are using it. They're using staging. I don't know. This I was told that we cannot export parts of kubeadm and then vendor them back into KK. This is what I was told.
And sorry, I have a momentary blackout. How it is the principle of staging? So when something is staging, you have to modify it in staging or in the external repository?
The way it works is, if you there's a publishing bot. That's the name of the bot. It's a publishing bot. If you want to make a change in a repository that is called kubernetes/kubectl, let me give you an example. You don't you don't send the PRs for this repository. You have to send them to Kubernetes staging kubectl, which is then taken by this bot. The bot calculates the tags and everything, and then publishes the whole contents of this tree to the designated repository.
Okay, So it will be the other way around. We build the library into Kubernetes and we publish the library to the repo.
Yes, the staging process is arguably backwards from the idea of splitting the monolith.
Okay, maybe I have to, let me say, try to write down some goals for this discussion, and then maybe we set up a different meeting, or we start sharing a document and collecting some kind of problem and question so we can see if this is something viable.
Yeah, I agree. A separate document and even booking separate meetings with kubeadm and cluster API people to discuss this is it's mandatory.
Okay, I will try to get this, at least this discussion started.
All right.
Okay.
We are out of time. Does anybody else have like final comments for today?
Just thank you for the discussion. It was really interesting for me.
Right, no problem. I guess we should call it. All right, so take everybody. See you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.